Welcome to the People's Guild.
Each week we explore the Splinterland universe with guests from all across the mythical land of Praetoria.
Join us on our journey as we discuss the evolution of the game, the strategy, the lore, and the exciting path that lies ahead.
To support the People's Guild, make sure you subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts, and also check us out on PeakD, YouTube, and Twitter.
Send your questions, suggestions, and epic battles in our comments through Twitter or email at thepeoplesguildspl@gmail.com. We'll feature the best in our episodes and maybe airdrop you some prizes.
Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show.
Welcome back to the People's Guild. Another week, another episode, another wonderful guest. Been chomping at the bit to get this guy on for quite some time. Was just teasing him a little bit. Kind of felt like I had to twist his arm on air a couple of Monster Maverick shows consecutively to make it happen. He's kind of routinely, and I certainly appreciate this. So on behalf of both of us here, I appreciate you always kind of dropping episode links in Mav chat and sharing what you find interesting in the episodes. It's very cool to see. We not having our primary presence on YouTube, it's a little bit more difficult to kind of see who's actually listening. So it's fun to see comments from guys like yourself. Quick shout out Aqualis and Push and Shove, Team Crypto Eater. Some cool stuff happening over there. Continues to kind of shake things up. Go check it out if you haven't yet. Without further ado, we've got VetteV, VetteV. Welcome to the show, man. It's good to see you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thanks for being here. So yeah, let's get this out of the way right away. Let's get the clarification on the name. Let's get the story.
Sure. So for pronunciation, I like the VetteV. That works out good. Aggie was the first one in a town hall reading a comment said it, and I was like, oh, that works. Because as it was written, VetteV, I had to come up with a Discord handle once I got into this crypto space through my sister, actually. I was like, what is this Discord thing? Discord. Sounds like a lot of arguing. All right, I'll sign up. And I chose this one because of, well, Corvettes, right? I like Corvettes. And then the palindrome nature of a V at the end seemed to set me apart. I was like, this works. I'll roll with it. VetteV. This works. So it's nice and looks good, especially number one on the leaderboard. I definitely like it sitting there.
Nice little tip to your own hat there. Man,
that's just to my account. Let's not be silly here. I mean, I've got a scholar, the best in the game, running that, Mr. Altums, and he's a beast.
He is a beast, man. I think he also runs Kazrak, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
He does. Yep. I talked to Kazrak as he was looking for a scholar and asked about Altum. I was like, oh, reach out. He's the best. Let's see. And he pulled him on. And the day afterwards, he showed me some battles. Altum was already winning. And he's like, I'm coming for you. And sure enough, we're right up there, 1 and 2.
Yeah, you guys are 1 and 2, man. You think that's kind of like almost like a conflict of interest. You need to get some, like I had him first. He's got to, I get the top leaderboard spot. You got to get his win rate down or something. I don't know, man.
I will say I thought I would be, completely neutral about it. But when I did see one of those days that Kazrak was pulling ahead of my account, and I was like, wait a second. But no, it's good. Altums is longtime scholar of mine. God, almost 2 years now, I would think, in some form, and really upstanding guy. I haven't seen it yet, so I think I'm safe to say you'll never see those two accounts battling each other. So he plays it straight, and that's really important, I think, for the game and for the scholar account owner relationship. So it's working out great.
Yeah, the scholar thing seems to have gotten a little bit more pushback. I don't ever remember it being an issue for folks, but I want to say the last couple of months, once we kind of the dust settled on the bot stuff, all of a sudden we had to target our frustration somewhere else, and all of a sudden scholars became an issue. You've been around for quite some time in the game, and you certainly hang with a bunch of the OGs in the Splinterlands ecosystem. Was scholaring ever an issue previously to your memory?
Never. So it was very surprising to see that in Discord, that there were folks coming up and almost like creating an issue with scholars. Do you know the history of scholars in Splinterlands?
Enlighten us.
Yep.
All right. Well, I'll do my best. It predates my time there. I came in September of 2019. But as I came in, I quickly joined Team Possible Guild, and I was hearing about these heron accounts, like the bird, herons. And folks would say, "Oh, do you want a heron account to play?" And I was like, "Okay, what is it about this bird, and what is this account?" So at the time, there was, I forget the player's name, but he worked a lot with Neil, actually, Neil McSpadden, and a few other OGs, and they put together decks for new players to come in and run. And so it was a way to help onboard folks. And that capability is one of the first things I saw in this game and in blockchain in general. I was like, okay, this sets it apart. You can take NFTs, permanent items on a blockchain, but loan them out for them to be used by people that don't own them, but they can be used in a game to win. So scholaring wasn't called scholars in Splinterlands. Splinterlands, I feel like, pretty much invented it. I mean, for as far as I know, as a heron account. It wasn't until the SPS pump that a lot of organizations came in. It was like around as the token was about to launch, we got introduced to these big guilds like YGG, and Nifty Arcade came soon after. This scholar universe came over from Axie, and that's where the term scholar came from. Before then, nobody in Splinterlands Discord knew what the word scholar meant. We were laughing about it. We were like, who's this scholar? What are you scholaring about? How educated must you be? But it was a whole environment we had no idea. And the thing is, it fits so perfectly into the mechanisms that the Hive blockchain and Splinterlands already had. So we were able to adopt it really quick. Now, that said, this new version of it, which was popularized by Axie and then we built on top of, I think it was best put. I heard Biz, so Byzantinist, he put it like this. It's like a horse race, right? Horse racing. You have the owner, who's never sitting on a horse and racing it. But then you have the jockeys. Whenever you're betting on a horse race, you bet on the horse and the jockey, not just the horse, right? You can't have a dummy jockey running even the best racehorse and expect to win. That's exactly what it is. So to me, this is not just something convenient. I think it's an absolutely critical benefit. It's a feature for games in Web3. And I think Splinterlands does it really, really well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird to kind of, it has been around for so long, to hear it now start to become an issue is kind of strange. So I don't know who got that kicked off. I mean, do you think it's maybe more of, having the same person play the top 5 or 10 accounts, or, or the few people playing, a bunch of different accounts that are now going to be up on the leaderboard? Is that kind of what's throwing people off?
I think it starts with kind of what Django's said, where, all right, they've dealt with their first gripe. So now what are they going to gripe about? Because the pain that some of these, I'll call them like perpetual trolls, the perpetual negativity in Discord, the pain that they felt can't be solved. They unfortunately came in at a peak of a market and they bought in and they've written it down. And that money that was spent isn't coming back unless the game does a complete 180. And even then, they want to see it like yesterday. So there is no solution to that pain directly. So it's unfortunate. That's all I can see, because I haven't seen any good arguments. I mean, yeah, they've said stuff like that. Oh, it's the same people, or it's just a few people that are running all these accounts. That this should just be a gamer's single owner, single account. You can only play on accounts that you own the cards, because it also came with you've heard the renting. Like, some people think the rental market is destroying the game. No, the rental market gave access and still gives access to the game. I mean, AfterSun made a video this week talking about how cheap it is to rent an entirely max Chaos Legion deck, which when botted in Wild can make it all the way to Diamond Plus, and in Modern can stand pretty easily in Gold and into Diamond with a decent player. Renting isn't a problem. I think it's that belief that there's this unfair. Okay, it's unfair that they get to play this many accounts. Is it though? They're choosing to spend that time, right? They're choosing to develop that skill, and they're in a different place of life. Like Altums, who's running my accounts, is 19. He might be 20 now. He started running these accounts when he was 17, still a senior in high school. And he's so maybe 19 is what he did. I'm 40 years old. I don't have the time a 19-year-old has to put in that many battles to get that good at this game.
Yeah.
So it's just a good balance to have that possibility. So I don't know. I think it's peculiar. I don't think it had much legs. I do think there's opportunity to improve and actually to not just improve, but to present the scholar program or the scholar aspect in a more formal and user-friendly way. This is something I've talked to Altums about and a few other people. Imagine going into a bid board of such, like a job posting board, where you say, so Nifty Arcade tried this. They just didn't have the presentation. But you can go up and say, all right, I have this deck. It has these stats, has this win rate, has this earnings over the last few seasons. And then you have on the other side, these scholars, the jockeys. They have this win rate. They have this history. They've been playing since this time. They've placed in these accounts in these tournaments. And they match up. And then it becomes a bid sort of situation. I think that there's definitely a marketplace for that now. It might not be as busy as it was before, but having that in place for when interest returns, I think would be incredibly useful. Not to mention, it'll be easier now with the multi-key aspect of Hive. So there's these, you can pretty much create a login key that someone else can use essentially. That's much better than it used to be. The way it used to be, and the way I'm doing it, but I don't recommend, is you essentially give a posting key to your scholars. You have to trust them. A better way to do it in the past was to create a totally separate playing account that you then delegated cards from your owner account to play in. But the problem with that now is all the soulbound stuff. That means that other account gets your soulbound stuff, not your primary. What if you built your primary in a guild and you put in guild points and you have your record there, but now you want to move into playing? So it's a lot more complicated. This multi-sig key situation, or however the multiple key thing works, I think is the step to do. So there's an opportunity for sort of scholar job board UI essentially to be created.
I think that is, I was just kind of say, that's a great idea. And I think that sort of seems like we have that capability pretty easily, like we said, with the rental market and the way we kind of have things and way people have built out certain tools, like Peak Monsters or like Siler, how Siler did the SPS rental system. It seems like we have people who are familiar with kind of doing something like that. And, having, recently looked into like other blockchain games just to see what's out there. The rental market and these types of things are what is a huge advantage for Splinterland. Like these are things that, other games just aren't even coming close to having these sort of options. So I think, leaning into these things is going to be better for us in the long run, as opposed to kind of trying to vilify them in some way just because, you don't like to lose matches, right? So,
right.
I think that right there, Hep, is at the core of why this argument against scholars has kind of raised its head. Is we've gotten rid of bots and I'm still not winning, and it's because a bunch of accounts, you look at the top 15, there's 2 from Altums, 3 from Mondroid, and that's 30% of the big payouts on the leaderboard right there from 2 guys playing 5 accounts. Uh, but to your point, Vet, something that I would really love to see is the team, Nate and co, really lean into, I'd love to see like Heron's recruitment board or something like that. And it's built in as part of the academy. It brings in some social aspect into the user interface. And yeah, you're essentially able to post your resume. This is what I've done with, XYZ accounts over the last, ABC seasons. And I've placed with, this sort of DEC payouts and just start the discourse around, finding appropriate scholars for your account if that's, how you choose to play the game. And to your other point, man, I feel like it's really such a fantastic feature that Splinterlands has put together is the ability to, essentially grant access to my account. There is an element of trust that is required, but I think most scholars who aspire to maintain their status as a scholar, they're not going to F that up, right? Like
Right.
it's a small community. If you F that up once, then you're pretty much toast. Who's going to hire
No.
you on a moving forward basis?
Exactly. And I think having something more forward facing helps that even more. Because there have been instances where scholars previously, especially, would think, okay, you're only playing my account, maybe a buddy of mine's account, but then they're sitting there with 10 accounts and they're playing them all, and who knows what they can do with that, right? And that can lead to a bad situation in terms of, there were situations where both owners would want to be in a tournament. And I ran into this situation too, where, Ultims would be running my account and be running a guildmate's account. And we're both in the same gold foil tournament. Gold foil tournaments, you move one place, that's big money. At the time, that could have been $100 in difference in place. And you're like, okay, so what does he do if two of the accounts are matched up? And we worked that out. Like I said, okay, so first off, when he was running two of my accounts, my prime and my gold foil alt, I didn't enter the same tournaments with both. Just made it easy. But if he was running two that were separate owners, I can't tell the other owner not to join. I just said, let me know, and I'll play that battle, right? Because in tournaments you can choose. That's great to do on the back end, but nobody knew we were discussing that. If we have a board in the front and we have comments and feedback and stuff like that, that will be critical to developing the best scholars and the best account managers, because the account owner is not an innocent party in this. I mean, they need to do their part too. You were talking about like Altims and Mondroid taking 5 of the top 15 spots, but what else is happening with those top accounts, right? The number of battles that have played on the VetteV account is 25 purchased energy per day this entire season. So it's not like just playing. There's investment that goes in, not to mention about 7,000 DEC daily of Rebellion that's rented. So I haven't maxed out that set yet, but you need a lot of those cards maxed if you're going to play at the top of the leaderboard. It's not a secret how to do it, but you have to have all the pieces. So it's interesting when I see some people comment and they're like, oh, well, this just happened. Well, that's what's great about a game like this, because the game is not just a battle. The game is strategy. The game is tactics. There's a lot more that goes into it. And I actually enjoy the management part. I enjoy the managing of the assets and then doing that stuff. That's where I like to play. And then, the young whippersnapper can spend his time and his energy and his focus and become the best player in the game. And it's great for both.
Well, it goes even further than that, right? Like it's not just I'm assuming that Altims isn't just playing because he loves the game. I'm sure there's some financial incentive there, and I don't know.
Have you heard some of the stories?
I
have you heard some of the stories of what scholars get? So I'll give you one. So granted, this was when SPS was higher, but when he first started playing my account, we had that energy system, that ERC system, where you could run it down to 0% or close to 0% and you wouldn't get any rewards. Well, I let him do that because his first season, I said, just play as much as you can to learn it. He played over 800 matches in the first season with my account, so we could learn the game and dominate it. And then the next season, he went on and was earning tournaments and everything else. Within a few seasons, he was able to bring home enough US dollar income that it actually matched his father's paycheck in the Philippines. And the way he did it, because he was a kid doing this, is he shared it with his family. So part of his income went to the family pot. And in addition to that, what he shared with me, and this was probably 6 or 7 months into playing the accounts, and he just wanted to share, I appreciate playing your accounts. I was able to build a wall, make changes to the house, and build a wall for my family. So for the first time, me and my 3 siblings didn't have to share a room.
That's kind of where the buck stops for me, with the anti-scholar sentiment that floats around. I mean, I feel like, maybe Agrode was leaning into the peace, prosperity, and freedom narrative from a little bit of a marketing standpoint, but the reality is there's proof of that occurring through Splinterlands, and this is exactly the type of story that I think helps to drive that point home, and that even with assets at all-time lows or damn near all-time lows at this point, it's still making a very significant impact for folks like that, and it's
in certain parts of the world.
Yeah, very cool,
and
man.
that's the
I
challenge.
appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And I checked with Altums to be able to share that story a while ago when I first was sharing it with Aggie. And you got to know, I mean, Aggie and Yaba heard these stories all the time. That's what fuels them, right? You don't hear about them as easily in Discord because they might be said, but they're kind of lost in the mess of everything else. And I will say the chat, at least the Mav chat in particular, is mainly dominated by European and American and Australian account owners, right? Yeah, there are top players in there, Mondroids, the Altums. Hyde was in there for a while. He's a scholar. He's Jimmy's scholar. And Jimmy talked about Hyde a lot. Hyde and Altums were really close. I don't know if they got to meet in person, but they would battle and challenge each other all the time to get better. And that was fun Jimmy and I would be sitting back talking to Discord how our accounts were doing. It's like, oh man, Hyde beat Altums. Oh no, Altums beat Hyde. And we're in there watching it. It's like watching a horse race and seeing our horses do good or not as good. And I mean, that's the thing. It's like there's fun to it and there's clearly benefit. And that it goes to one of the things that Aggie said that was really, it was the first time I had heard him say, and I really enjoyed it, was, what is blockchain and Web3? What is the potential of this? And he said, it is to redraw or redo the spawn points. Like if you're thinking of life as a game, redo the spawn points. Because everybody got spawned in the world, luck of the draw. You're in the US, you automatically are better off than a lot of other places in the world. And same in other countries, and there's various good and bad about where you are. But that spawn point wasn't your choice. In Web3, with the opportunities that are here, in a game like Splinterlands, with all its warts and faults and delays and everything else, still has the opportunity and still has enough caring community members that somebody can come in and say, hey, I want to choose a different spawn point. What can I do? And if they have the right attitude and they have the time to put in, somebody else with the money and the assets will meet them. That's still there. I don't know too much about other games or other communities. I was more involved with them previously. So I'd be excited to hear that that's elsewhere as well. But of some of the older projects that I'm still lurking in their Discords, I still don't see that type of community anywhere else.
Well, that even further drives home the point that this is something that Splinterlands really needs to kind of, hang its hat on as a draw for lots of these folks in less fortunate parts of the world, man. Yeah, again, appreciate you sharing, dude. And I think Jimmy, Hep, correct me if I'm wrong, and Vette, maybe you listened to the episode and can recall. I think, if memory serves, Hyde was able to buy a car, his first car, with the earnings that he had pulled from playing Fat Jimmy.
Yeah, I think that was something like that. He was able to, and it does change people's lives, but it doesn't go without effort. That's the thing, is like people will talk about Splinterlands and approach it as it's just a game. And it's like, okay, so you want to have just a game that pays you. Well, just a game doesn't pay you. Effort, work, results, something of it as a deliverable pays you. And so, yeah, it's fun to challenge people. It's fun to do brawls and that type of stuff, and it's unpaid in entertainment. But if you're going to do ranked play, if you're going to get to the leaderboards, if you're going to win the gold foil tournaments, one works for it. And if one doesn't have the assets to buy into that alpha gold foil deck, well, there's also work in researching who owns those alpha gold foil cards. I guarantee, and this was prior to Land doing its thing, but it's probably still true. If someone like an Ultims or a Hyde or a Mondroid or someone else came in and they were like, you know what? I like this game. The community's cool. I want to make something of this. Let me go find where these alpha gold foils live. And they found someone like a Neil. I'm not committing Neil to this. I don't know if he'd agree to it, but someone like Neil. He's got a ton of alpha gold foils and alpha betas just sitting on land. But he's doing it for the returns. Do you think for a second that if somebody proposed to him, hey, I can win in a tournament, let me prove it to you, give me 2 seasons, that he wouldn't look at entertaining that? Of course he would. Somebody with that mindset, because that's what Neil's doing, is he's just getting returns on land till the next phase of the game. There's people like that all around. And I'm sure there's opportunities like that all over Web3 and gaming, but it's particularly true here. And so to me, that's when I kind of get frustrated about the gaming discussions and Discord and everything else. I just don't see it as simply that. It's not just a game. It's not just you log in and I want take this. This is something that's driven me crazy from the first time I heard it. Is it probably predated SPS. I know it did because we had the Lambo bots early on. They're like, "Oh, I'm so frustrated. I'm up against a bot. I'm so frustrated. I'm up against a bot." And I was so confused by that because I'm like, "Why?" Well, I expected to play a human. Well, that doesn't sound like it has any problem with reality. It sounds like it has a problem with your expectation. I personally didn't have an expectation to be human. I mean, it's likely, but it's also Web3. People can program it. What's wrong with a bot? I actually enjoyed playing bots usually. The Lambo Army, I don't know if you know what that means. The Lambo Army was 2020. It was the J69's group, and he would call the Lambos. Every one of his accounts was named after some Lambo, and they would just take over the leaderboards. Well, most of his accounts were not optimized, and they just became free ranking points when you figured out the way they played. And I found the similar thing with battle helpers and other things. And to me, it's like, okay, I grew up playing bots. I grew up playing. It's funny, I have my old Nintendo NES system downstairs, and I'm always playing against the computer. I mean, and play Contra. Just pick that up. Try that again. And I'm realizing how tired my thumb gets and how difficult it is. On freaking 3 lives and 1 continue to beat a game. Forget that. That's a bot. And they're like, well, these are optimized. Contra was optimized. It's optimized that you fail. Kung Fu. Pick up that Kung Fu cartridge.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how difficult those levels got. Once you got to 3 and up to 4, forget about it.
Yeah.
Forget about it. I need Ultim hours in a game to figure out how to do that game. That's not the problem. I mean, the extraction, sure, from an economic side. But bots is not a problem. I mean, take what Yabba's doing now. He's putting bots in ranked play. It's not that we're playing bots is the problem. But yeah, all this to say, Splinterlands is a game for a lot of different people. There's those that can come in and just play a game. There's those that can play the economy. There's those who can play the collection game. There's those that can play the crypto DeFi game. There's those that can play the management game. There's those who try to play all of the game, which I honestly don't think one can do anymore. It's too complicated and expansive. And in a way, that's good. In another way, it's frustrating for folks like us that used to be able to have one of everything. We can't. But yeah, I think match I can get a bit negative, a bit. But there's a lot of good that's still in the bones of Splinterlands and still is active. It's just quiet right now relative to the loud voices that are on repeat. in the Discord channels.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, kind of when you got in the game, what was it about the game that, attracted you the most? You have a pretty solid collection. Like you said, you're in a lot of the alpha gold foil tournaments and things like that. So, what attracted you to it, and what made you kind of want to get so involved in it?
Yeah, well, I don't have those. I don't have the AlphaGo foils. I came in at the end of beta.
Okay.
So it was, but even then, I've reduced my collection down to pretty much a playing deck of regular foils. But it goes all the way back to beta, so it's complete beta forward deck, working on Rebellion. When I was looking in September 2019, so the catalyst was I was listening to the podcast, Bad Crypto Podcast. So Jimmy talked about this, and I heard Ag a short interview, like 10 minutes, and he talked about this game. And he mentioned it's kind of like Magic the Gathering. It's fast. I'm like, ooh, Magic the Gathering. And I'd been carrying these two card boxes. They're about, those 1.5 foot long card boxes, two of them, for 25 years. Everywhere I moved, those cards came with me. They weren't worth anything because at the time I was in Magic, anytime I get a good card, I would sell it so I could get 2 more packs. That was dumb. But what I realized 25 years later was, all right, I came into Magic just after Unlimited into the 4th edition. If I had sought the Unlimited and beta cards, which I had access to at $5, $10 a piece, those cards, even in moderately played or crappy condition, would be worth a whole lot more. And so once I came into Splinterlands, I saw beta was running out. I was already in crypto for a couple of years. I dabbled in Bitcoin and Ethereum and a few other things, but nothing exotic. And I was really into the gaming. I was like, okay, blockchain is going to upend everything in the way of contracts, everything in the way of anything that has to do with accounting or collectability, really. And I saw gaming, specifically trading card games, as ideal. So when I came in, I was like, okay, this is a perfect match for blockchain technology. Crypto, there weren't many earnings with Splinterlands at the time. It was more of like, okay, I'm at the end of beta. I'm going to put enough in that it matters. And that's something that we say a lot on Map Chat. Neil reminds everybody about that. When one wants to get involved with something seriously, whether that's an investment or, Web3 game or whatever it is, this isn't investment advice. It's just anecdotal experience, is it has to matter enough such that if your position or if my position, it was something that could be lost, but it was slightly uncomfortable that I put into beta so that it made a difference. And I saw that, okay, I'm making strides in ranked play. I'm doing pretty well. The community was very welcoming. The game was addicting, as we know. I mean, we're still talking about it even after the depths of the bear and without the benefits of the bull quite yet. But it's an addicting gameplay. And then I just got the bug of, I want to be up on the leaderboards. I want to complete a set. How do I do this? And it just hit that nerve in me that's like, okay, collector, how do I do this? Got my spreadsheets out. What does it take to max beta? All right, beta went out of print. Do I get it now? What is it? I have spreadsheets that go back to December 2019 where I was looking at the per card price of beta and how much it would cost to max out my deck as Untamed was about to launch. But it was really Untamed that I was able to grab a foothold. At that time, Splinterlands did Kickstarters. And so they had done a Kickstarter from the very beginning, and they did a Kickstarter with each new set. And so with Untamed, they had Kickstarter has those breakpoints. And one of the second highest breakpoint was $1,000. And my position in my situation in life and all that, $1,000 wasn't out of range. But it was a stretch. I mean, to dump $1,000 into a project that I barely knew much about, had no guarantee anything would be returned. I was like, well, I've spent things probably this much on more foolish things. This is actually fun. And the rewards were pretty good. I didn't get a legendary summoner named after me, but I got a bunch of chain golems at the time. essentially $600 worth of packs. So it was really only a $400 delta. I was already going to buy $600 worth of packs. And then a few other perks. Oh, the title, which actually came in handy. And so then if they hit benchmarks, they were going to get more. They ended up hitting benchmarks. So I got a max gold foil chain golem out of it. I multiple maxed regular foil chain golems just from that Kickstarter. And that's what really set it up, because with that many packs and a few more with Untamed, I was able to get a good foothold and be like, okay, this sets me apart in gameplay and access to assets. And so from then, it was just luck that I stuck around. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, though, you got to realize, like, and I'm sure I know that other people have talked about it. The current time in Splinterlands is a really, really tough time. But there were times prior to this that were shorter lived, but more dire in the way that we didn't know if tomorrow the website would be off. Like a 50% attack on Steam that would take down Splinterlands potentially, at least take the control away. I mean, Splinterlands could potentially not exist. That was the whole Justin Sun thing. You have the J69 thing where he has a vendetta against the team, comes out with a lawsuit, tries to take down the market by selling everything at about 40% of market prices, tanking the market. DEC goes down to, at that time, 440 Splintoshis was the low that I saw. And there were probably, I would say there were still less active players then than there are now. And folks like Neil and others bought it up. They're like, I needed this card anyway, or I'm going to complete this set. And they were able to buy it up. And it wasn't during a bull market that they did that. This was still in the prior to the last bull market. So there were times when that the game was like, okay, we don't know if we're going to be here this next time. SPS was just that once in a project's lifetime thing. And it was nuts. It was nuts. And that was the luck, was all right, for any of those that stuck it out, that happened to put in a reasonable amount before SPS launched, it just showered rewards on those people. And it created an environment that made it look like, oh, all I have to do is dump money into this project. I'm going to make money on the other end. And as anybody who's been in crypto or any bubble environment, whether that be stocks or anything else, knows that's not reality. And unfortunately, we're on the other end of it. But I think what that has taught a lot of folks who are still around is, one, I'm not going to let the opportunity pass me by again, whenever that happens in whatever form. And two, that the prior to SPS path wasn't so bad. And I'll say the path in that every month, regardless of what the game went through, it grew about 1 to 3%. Every month grew 1 to 3% in player base, in market cap. It was incredibly consistent. That, I think, is the first target. And I think, and I can't speak for Yaba, but extrapolating on the actions and how he's approaching things, it seems like what he's aiming for. And that would be really, really healthy.
There's a lot to unpack there, Vette. So I'm curious. I mean, initially when you bought in Splinterlands, the ecosystem, the economics, the nature of the assets, the scholaring, all of this stuff sort of ticked a lot of your boxes for, identifying a project that you wanted to invest into and to participate in the community and all of these sorts of things. That was a long time ago, and things have changed, and you are still here, granted in a somewhat more limited capacity than you were a couple of years ago, and you've hit. I think you mentioned it on the Monster Maverick show. Maybe is the last episode or the episode before. Would you mind sharing the percentage of your assets that you've parted ways with, and can you
Yeah,
expand on the why, more importantly there?
sure. Yeah, so I've divested out of my Splinterlands position at least 80%, possibly approaching 90% of my position. It's kind of tough to tell because you have the valuation shifting, and I have some land still working otherwise. Um, but I mean, it's the vast majority, and the reasons are varied. And I mean, the primary one is just a shift in what I want outside of the game. Um, I have a small business that I run, I own, and I have needs there and opportunities to pursue in the real world. And so the funds, even though they were depressed from the highs, a lot of the assets that I was able to sell sold for higher than my initial entry cost. So I didn't lose anything in that term in terms of cost basis. But it didn't come without, the gut punch like we all are feeling, oh, if I'd only sold it at the peak. That said, I would say it was near the end of the SPS airdrop. I started getting into a mode of I need to train myself to be unemotional about the ins and the outs of a position. And Splinterlands, because like I said, how I came into it, the collector aspect. Like I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, my max regular foil collection is worth X amount of dollars on market price. And if everybody has their asset buckets, you look at what assets you have, and that'd be included on an asset balance sheet. Um, and so it's like, okay, well, is that a reserve that, oh, if something goes down or I need funds, could I use that? And yeah, they're sellable. They're buyers all the time. Like you talk Crypto Eater, Crypto Eater will buy anything at like 50%, 40% of current market price. Because I mean, that's his game. There's always a buyer at a certain price. So then I think, okay, so I have it out for 50% of whatever market price is. The challenge I have with, say, the max regular foil collection is it's still so emotional. But that's how I was with a lot of the assets. It was emotional. And part of this exercise was to break that. And so I needed to go through a lot of training of practicing selling and then practicing buying back in, practicing sticking to a plan. So if I'm going to enter a liquidity pool position and I'm going to do it for a certain time or I'm going to do it for a certain target, then I train that. And so that's been a lot of the last 12 months has been shifting of what I'm wanting real life versus Web3 investing or investing in general and training. So yeah, I don't know if that's interesting, but that's just the why.
No, I think that's you're kind of hitting the nail on the head for me with something that I'm sure resonates with a lot of folks is there is a lot of emotion tied into everything that we see on Discord, the general sentiment that's been floating around on YouTube. I feel like things have started to round the bend a little bit. We're starting to see, I don't know if I want to say the light at the end of the tunnel, but we're getting closer to that point where I feel like more people are embracing the idea of DCAing in just as much as you're able to DCA out. And
Yes.
that's a really tough habit to get into because you're always saying, as soon as you see a little bit of a pump, like, oh yeah, everything's going to the moon, I'll sell at the top. And then things start, coming back down and, those emotions rear their head again.
Right.
Whereas if you were just on that constant, okay, I'm going to sell, 1% a day or whatever that percentage looks like for you, it removes the emotion and it's just a much more systematic approach.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, Vet, are you, obviously the collector in you, I'm assuming that you still have those 2 big boxes of magic cards somewhere in your new place.
Oh man, you talk about the magic cards. I took a lot of crypto earnings that I actually sold cards. I was selling a few crons at $400 at BCX, so that was a good win, I guess.
Whoa.
Wow.
And yeah, those went into buying full boxes of magic cards. So I have expanded my collection quite a bit from 2020 to 2023 buying into just about every set. I didn't even realize the change in gameplay. Got to play with a friend of mine, and I don't play as much as I do collect, but I forget who it was. There was someone in the Discord, I don't know if it was Stealth or someone else, that gave me the idea of buying a booster box essentially for him and his kids. So he bought one of each set. And I was like, dude, I'll do that. Because I want my boys. I got three boys, young boys. And I was like, I don't know if they'll ever care to play this. It's something I liked playing. Maybe they will. If they do, then we have a booster box, one of each set from 2020 to 2023. If they don't care at all, there's a good chance it'll be worth as much as I paid for it. So it'll just sit there. So yeah, I've quite a bit of Magic now.
$400 Cron BCX, man. That's crazy. That good for
When
you
I
for
saw
pulling the trigger
those,
on selling those babies.
when I saw I think that was my first emotional sell. And it was like, okay, I don't want to let go of any of this stuff because we're still earning SPS airdrop points. But I wasn't renting it out at the time. And I was like, I can use this somewhere else. Let's try. And I sold one. I'm like, wow, that was easy.
Yeah.
And I sold another. I'm like, wow, that was easy too. But it was funny. I started selling them. I probably had so it was interesting. There were two legendaries I just kept opening over and over. And I guess I was untamed. And Kron was one of them. Not Llama, just the Kron. So I had a lot of single BCX floating around. But I remember as I was selling through about 5 of them I started at 400. And by the time I sold the last one, it was probably just under 300. And it was probably only over a month and a half. And I was like, ooh, this is dropping fast. So yeah, I got in just in time to capture that. But it's not to say that I didn't make other, this isn't something where I was only ups. So August, September timeframe, and I think I said this on the Monster Maverick show, is I would watch Neil's position as owner. I think he had 3% of the market for a while until Untamed really hit its stride. I was like, all right, if I'm just 0.5%, or if I'm like 1% of Neil's stack, then I'm a pretty good stack. But in order to gain that position early in the SPS, I was like, okay, well, I need to get some funds from outside into a liquidity pool. I brought 50K in, put it in liquidity pool. By the time I took it out, it was 5. So that's a lot of crons. So it's like, you win some, you lose some. In the end, I'm still up, not as much as, it was at one time. But one can't look at from the outside into any account and assume that really anything that one's perspective captures it all. Because there's a lot of things that happen in the background, and everybody's emotional about it to some point. I mean, you look at some of these biggest account holders, they've had shifts. I remember, so my total assets topped out over 1 million in the run. I think it was 1.2 million. And I was top 25 account. But that's a little misleading too, because I had a lot of my assets in a single account. There are a lot of players that have them spread out. So I might have been in the top 50 or top 100 community members in terms of asset ownership. So you have these 10 million peak or 15 million peak total assets that have come down to sub 1 million. That can't be completely unemotional. I mean, people are going to think about it. People are going to feel it. What I see is many of the people that were in that position had a different attitude towards it, like a crypto eater that's in it for a specific reason and sticks to his reason. Or you have the Dave McCoys that are just in a different spot of their life same thing with Azricon. I mean, they're in a different place in their life. They've chosen a path with this. Doesn't mean they don't feel emotion about it. I mean, that can't be a good thing that happened, but they're able to weather it differently. And as I viewed this, because I'd say I was sort of in the middle. I never had this big of an up and this big of a drop for me. And it was pretty significant in terms of total account value, in terms of my overall life. I tried to learn a lot from that. Okay, so how do I get into a position that it's just another thing. And I think that's a lot of my rebalancing of the position. And I wanted to have dry powder. Like, this is something interesting about the cycle of the bull run. So I know we go through this in Mav Chat. We pull up the charts a lot. So there's a story I have. So I run my business as a small shop, and I had two techs that were working for me, and they had never done anything in crypto. This was July of 2020. And I said, all right, guys, you've never done crypto, anything else. Here's the deal. If you come to me tomorrow and show me you set up a MetaMask wallet, then just give me your public key and I'll send you $100 worth of Ethereum. There you go. Because I want to encourage people to get in. Well, they both did it within a day or two. They gave me, the wallet. And we were able to do it. This is July of 2020. I'm pretty sure it was 2020. And at that time, that would be about $330 of Ethereum. And it was funny. One guy did it, and then a couple of days later, the other guy did, and his Ethereum was worth about $20 less because he waited. So he got a little less Ethereum. So it's still $100 worth, but he had less Ethereum. Well, they rode that all the way up, and they were still working for me whenever we peaked out at just over $4,000 per Ethereum. So they had over $1,000 worth of Ethereum in this MetaMask account that they never had before. What that did for them is at least show them that, hey, this is something that has legs and could be part of where I might want to put some attention, where I might want to put some money. Now, that I don't think is the best part of the story. That's fun. But I think the best part of the story is, all right, July 2020, the market had already started going up by then. So the bull run had already kind of started. The bull run really went into full effect into the end of 2020, early 2021. It was the downturn of the bear. That $100 MetaMask wallet never got back down to $100. It was still over $100. We didn't get back to that low of $300 per Ethereum. And this is what's critical for folks that are in the market like crypto is you're talking about DCAing is like, all right, have a plan. Try to stick to the plan and be objective about the plan. Recognize that emotions can happen, but separate them. So this ties back into the lesson that I was trying to get from the Dave McCoys and the Azarcons and those who I see as the OGs. It's like, okay, how can they approach this, not with rose-colored glasses, really with apathetic glasses? Like, it's going to do what it's going to do. Or as Neil said and many others say, markets are going to market. I can't affect the market. I can affect my entry, and I can affect my plan, and I can affect my expectation, or rather control my expectation, which is generally where the emotions come from. So let me remove an expectation, keeping an objective plan that will respond to the third-party movements of the market. And if I can do that, then I think that's the win.
Definitely sage advice. I wanted to go back to, you talked about the, kind of the growth of the game before SBS, and it was on like a steady trajectory of like a 1% to 3%. And you think that's kind of where the team would like to get back to. Do you think that is going to be, possible without like a big pump in SBS prices or a big, move in the markets? I mean, we've already come, back up. We're not on a huge high compared to, like Bitcoin, what it was in 2021. But so like, what do you think from all your experience in the game, what do you think is going to be the thing, the catalyst that gets us back to that sort of growth point, as opposed to, where it seems like we're at now, where we're shedding, maybe that many people per month as opposed to growing?
I haven't formed a prediction, but I can talk through thoughts on kind of what would frame that or lead to possible prediction. Before SPS, the earnings of a battle was tiny. Less than a penny per battle you would win. In champ, like a top battle. Because DEC was worth 450 to 700 Splintoshis. So that's what, $0.0007. And you would get just a little bit. The cards would have a small uptick when a set went out of print, but would quickly fall back down. And in the middle of a print run, like we saw with Untamed, it was very similar to the current situation with Chaos Legion. Packs were selling for 50 cents a piece or less, and cards were a quarter of what they were, close to burn rate. Neil even had a program set up. It was called DEC 101. And what he would do is he would pay you 101% of burn value for any BCX that you sent him of cards, of non-maxed cards. And then the idea was the script would collect the cards, and once he had enough, it would combine them and burn it for the 105% burn. So essentially, he captured the 4%, but he would do the work of collecting the BCX and take the risk that he doesn't get them all max. That was a profitable system up until just before SPS launched. And I give that backstory because it's like, okay, let's take SPS and the pump out of the equation. Did people come in because there was a lot of earnings in Splinterlands? No. They came in for potential earnings over time, but really the expectation was some value for assets that were producing some value and rewards that may potentially have a lot more value in the future based on anecdotes like Magic the Gathering or Pokemon or any other long-standing TCGs. Now, that doesn't count the 10 to 20 times TCG projects that fell off the face of the earth, like 1990s Star Wars playing cards. Like, I had a few of those, and they're not worth anything. So, like, it was a risk. Now that we have the token, then it becomes a different situation because we went through a time period which is still fresh in people's minds, and there are a lot of community members that give their perspective of what happened to new players that never experienced it. That is to say, oh, I remember when a Cron was worth $400. Well, that creates a potential expectation or really a feeling of loss to a new player that, oh, my Cron will never be worth 400, or if anything is worth that much, it's just going to fall right down. I think that's a poor approach. That was, like I said, that's a once in a project lifetime thing. Now, the SPS token also puts us on a different level than just a game where you can earn some and retain value in NFTs. It's like, okay, I want my token to do something. So like I said, I don't know if I have a prediction of what it would take, but I see the headwinds that a token pretty much complicates what otherwise would be a simple, hey, come in for a fun TCG that when you buy a card, like with Magic, like you buy a card of a current set, it's not going to be worth what you paid for it. But it may be worth later if it becomes meta, or it ends up being rare, exceptionally rare, or something like that. But what's different than Magic the Gathering playing cards that you only, for 99% of people, they only play casually. In a Web3 game like Splinterlands, everybody can play ranked. Everybody can earn something with their assets, either playing themselves in Modern or botting it, or the hybrid we talked about before with Scholars. So there's value in the NFTs. That is appealing. That should still be appealing. And I don't know when we get over the hump that it almost doesn't matter what SPS does, that I can enjoy the game and the earnings that I'm getting. Like Aftersound says, and ice cream money. Yeah, it takes a little more battles to get that said ice cream money, but it's still ice cream money. Some of it's being cashed out, and I'm getting ice cream money. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with 10% return on asset cost basis for assets that, if you had bought in physical form, would literally sit in boxes for 25 years and never have any value? Or is in a digital blockchain that, as long as you retain your keys, never goes anywhere else, always stays in pristine condition, could be loaned out, And as long as the project is viable in some form, could be worth something. And that doesn't even count the fact that what are these NFTs actually? And this is something I thought about earlier this week when I was like, oh, what are we going to talk about today? You got to think about what are these NFTs? So you see the code that is for, say, that cron, right? It's C and then C for card and the series number dash and then some hexadecimal, identifier. I don't know the decoding of it, but some says gold foil, and it says whatever else insert the mint number or whatever. So it has some sort of significance in that number. That's really the unique aspect. There's only one of those in the whole game, in the whole blockchain. There's only one of them. It's minted at a certain time. You can track down when it was minted, and it is an NFT. What if somebody just came on top of all of our wallets and said, hey, all you Splinterlands people, Splinterlands assets, you know what I want to do? I want to take all of your assets that you have there, and instead of it being like 6 splinters, 6 elements, I want to make that the dragons are going to be like your, heroes or something. And then I'm going to make the fire element, it's going to be your weapons. And the water element's going to be your shield. And the life element's going to be your armor. And then they create a game that then uses the unique identifiers of our NFTs, independent of all the IP that Splinterlands has done. But it's the fact that we already have distributed amongst our multiple wallets of a player base unique identifiers that can be applied to a game that uses those types of identifiers. That's where I see the value in a robust, well-designed, and properly maintained blockchain Web3 game with NFTs. It's literally endless. Splinterlands can go away tomorrow. Somebody could pick up where they left off and just say, hey, all your collection, let's just shift it over to this mode.
Do you think is that a distinct possibility for our future? I know Matt has talked about, hey, an ideal future looks like many forks of Splinterlands, but then we've also heard folks say that in order to do that, we've got to have the code base, which we don't think will ever be released to enable said forks. I'm with you. I would love to see these NFTs kind of gain a second life in a completely different capacity, with completely new IP on a forked game. We talked to Games on the Block a couple of weeks ago, and he was dropping all sorts of forks, fork this and fork that, and do you see that as a realistic future for Splinterlands? And I have to imagine, again, shout out to Aftersound, utility is really the name of the game. And if we're able to create these new game modes through new forks of Splinterlands assets and kind of the core code base, is that a realistic possibility, you think?
Well, in a way, it's already happening. We have Splinter Forge, right? Then there's that Splinter Royale. Those all reference the assets that are in our wallets. They're referencing the database, the accounting ledger of all of our accounts to engage with their UI. That's essentially all it is. There's nothing that Splinterlands can do to prevent it. If it truly is an NFT, which at least the serial number of that unique identifier is, then anybody can take the scheme of, the numbering scheme that kind of breaks up the unique identifiers and say, all right, you've had 8 additions, 9 additions, whatever they're up to. Well, I'm going to do the same thing. You have 4 rarities. Okay, I can do the same thing. Regular foil, gold foil identifier. I can do a similar thing. And it won't be necessarily Splinterlands clone. They can all just represent something different. It's not to say, is that a direction Splinterlands can go? There's nothing they can do to prevent it if somebody wanted to do it, right? It's just a question of, does somebody want to do it? What would they get out of it? And And when you talk about forks, and this is kind of my thought on forks, a fork to me, and I don't know if this is what they mean, would be essentially, all right, we're going to take a snapshot of everybody's wallets and we're going to recreate it with our new thing. So your cron regular foil max with this serial number is going to become an equivalent XYZ NFT over here. That would be a fork, because it essentially takes the bones of the blockchain ledger of our accounts. It could include just the cards, the titles, token balances, whatever you want, and then it forks it over. But when that happens, you've lost the utility of the NFT itself with the second NFT. It's like every other fork that happened in the 2017 bull run, right? You had the Bitcoin forks, you had the Ethereum forks, and they would all do their own thing for a little while, and then they all crash down, because all that is dilution of interest and underlying, you know, assets, because it can only support so much. That said, I think this is where the DAO really has an opportunity. I don't know, there are other projects that have DAOs, and there are projects that are trying to create ecosystems. I think it's a long-term vision, but both the DAO and I also think land can play into this. Where imagine this. You have a legendary plot in Splinterlands Praetoria. Well, the legendary plot in land version 3.0 or whatever has the opportunity to be a forked game using all Splinterlands assets. And you as a legendary plot get access to certain key parts of code base or API that they provide to you that you can then use in developing a game. Now, it's on you to develop it. It's on you to do whatever you want with it, completely independent of Splinterlands. But people actually enter your legendary plot to go do it. So a legendary plot would be the gateway for Splinter Forge, directly in-game. It's almost like you go to the arcade in Splinterlands. And that's, okay, I've got Splinter Forge, got Splinter Royale. There was a betting thing that a community member used to do. Those could be in there. That's what I see as the potential that somebody's going to do at some time. This idea isn't mine. I'm just piecing together the stuff that I heard from Yaba's mouth in AMAs going back to 2020. This has been his vision of what he wants for the wider Splinterlands game. I mean, it's more than a game. The way he explained it, I don't know if it's something you guys heard, but it's like World of Warcraft. You're running around, and maybe not the interface necessarily, but you're going into an item shop and you're dealing with that clerk to buy your items and your spells or whatever, and that's where the items and spells came from. But it's more than that. Everything you do along that path is being created or serviced by land managers that own the land and have dumped resources into providing it. That was his vision. That's an incredibly ambitious vision that is not just gaming. That's ownership. That's business ownership. That's business management. And this is the thing, Jimmy and I have talked a lot about it. It's like, this is the piece, and Neil too, is a lot of the large account holders and the OGs of the game aren't just game players. They aren't just, oh, I play ranked play. They're essentially business managers. And they approach it as a business management thing. And that's what was attractive to us, because that's the Yaba and Aggie that we knew before SPS did its bonkers thing. I still see that as a possibility. But that's where I think there's a lot of dissonance across more of the community than there's ever been. Before, it might have been just the gamers that were upset, or the people that bought tokens that went down in value that were upset. Right now, there's dissonance at every level. The largest account holders to the smallest account holders just wanting to play the game. Because it's a question of, which way is Yaba going? What's happening? Is he still going the path that it's going to be this ambitious grand scheme of a platform? Or is it just going to tailor for gamers, which is more Web 2? And to answer that question that I guess I just presented, to me, it's not either or, it's just a matter of timing. And that goes back to what I was responding to before, like, why did I divest positions? Well, part of it is I'm also betting that it's going to take longer to get to where he wants to go in the grander fashion that I definitely want to be a part of. I don't want to go anywhere from Splinterlands. I don't want to not be a part of that grand vision. But I see that as a multi-year. This is like a life project for Yaba. I want to support that. There are a lot of people that want to support that, I think. It's going to take a while to get there. And for me, I was in a position where I could draw down my position in Splinterlands, redeploy those assets elsewhere, and I'm gambling essentially. And my bet is I'm able to buy in as that vision starts spinning up. Until then, I'm loving what I'm doing with Ultims and playing the game with a max deck. It's great fun, and playing guild brawls. I love those when I remember to play them. Don't even talk to my guildmates about that. But what I like, to me, guilds is the gaming aspect for the gamers. And you know what was really cool? I was reflecting on this earlier this week too. How common in Web3 is it to have a stream like you guys had last week, your roundtables? How common is that you have 5 people on for, what was that, 5 hours? You had to average like 4 or 5 people.
It's intense.
Like I watched, yeah. But in that time, you also brought in up to, I think, 7 people on screen, interacting with chat. You're doing challenges. You're doing battle challenges. That's only gaming. And that's gaming tactically in the battles. And that's gaming on the strategy and the ecosystem side. You were hitting all of the aspects of it. Again, I'm not too into other projects, but it's kind of a question to you and anybody that's listening. What other projects are really doing that? I know there are streamers that are like, ooh, watch me play this. It'll be fun. That's not a 5-hour stream of like just playing challenges that have no earnings or anything, and then talking about everything about the ecosystem in general.
I think too that just the Splinterlands, the game itself is kind of unique in that it can be played quickly. You can kind of look at the rule set your team within a couple minutes, and then watch the battle, and it's only a couple minutes goes by, where it's not something like a Hearthstone clone where like it's going to take 10-15 minutes. You couldn't do that. It would be a 5-hour stream, so like every one person could get like one battle in. It's just not as fun, or it's not as exciting, because so much of these other games too are so dependent, and Magic is like this as well. And our buddy Rogue has definitely talked about this, that it's so dependent on the luck of the draw of your hand. Like, if who's going to draw cards they need and when, and who's going to draw better cards out of their hand during the game. And Splinterlands isn't like that, right? You have different rule sets, and that creates the variability, as opposed to what card you draw out of your hand. But you have specific rule sets that could be, and there's more strategy and less luck, even though lots of times it does come down to the RNG of what hits and what misses, or what sticks, who sticks a poison or an affliction. Like, you're kind of like, just get to watch that in real time, and that's what makes it exciting to kind of watch people play it too. So yeah, it's not just like, oh, I really need to draw this card, or I drew a bunch of these cards that I can't use, and you're kind of just hoping that on your next turn you'll get something better. Like, now it's kind of, the die is cast. Let's see who had the better strategy. So yeah, I think it's a lot of fun. I really like doing those, because it is kind of like a lot of fun to just watch, and watch what people do.
For sure. And I think to that point of comparing it to Magic the Gathering, it makes me think of, what is Magic, what is the appeal of Magic the Gathering to the core audience? Is it being handed a deck? So they have those. They have commander decks now, right? You can buy a prefabricated commander deck. You can go out and play. is that the majority of the customer base from the ideal customer for Magic the Gathering? While I don't know the stats, I believe it isn't. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of energy and an interest spent in constructing your own deck and saying, all right, for my game pod, or I'm going to the game shop, or I'm playing online, I'm assuming it's similar, is like, okay, I want to optimize this deck based on what cards I have access to, what my budget allows, if I can do proxies, how these interface, these interact. The construction of the deck is as much or more of the game than the game itself. It's like you put in that effort. It's almost like growing a garden. You put in the effort to do the seeds, prepare the soil, to grow it, to tend to it. But then the fruit at the end is just the reward. That's the game. Did you win? Did you not? But it's the fun to play it to see how you perform. Splinterlands allows, I totally agree with you, and why it gets addicting is you have that fast turn. I think that's a huge thing. That isn't the whole game, though. The whole game is why you can go on for 5 hours talking about it. You can go on for 5 hours and be like, how does this interplay in the overall thing? How does Splinterlands fit in terms of, the rank for modern versus wilds? Can I do the bots? Do I need to buy this meta card? Do I rent this? How does that match with rewards? And just going back to the scholar example, like I enjoy that strategic part where it's like, all right, what cards are needed for Ultims to dominate the leaderboard? And what energy do I buy over what time? Because there's times when the rewards are at certain levels that I'll buy between 26 and 50 energy in a day because the rewards are there. That is a strategic move. That's a business decision, but that's the game for me. So I think that Splinterlands has touched on having a robust entertainment value or entertainment space like Magic the Gathering does, more depth to it, that I think Yabba is really looking at building upon, and kind of tying all the points together there with Yabba is what I see happening. And I don't know if this is right, but just my perspective is they focus solely on creating a foundation that is now customizable and more agile, not unlike that agile programming process, but nimble to be built upon and make changes to, that Yabba wanted to do from the first day the server fires happened when SPS launched. Since that day, he's been fighting fires. Now that he's in charge, if you notice, and this is something interesting, is people are around like, oh, stuff isn't happening fast. And I was talking to Jimmy about this, and I understand everyone's has their pain points and concerns and emotion, but something I noticed is Yabba's not giving out timelines. He's not even telling us everything that's going to launch on a given day. When the rank changes happened a while ago, this was probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, it just showed up. We knew the day before, or maybe the morning of, there's going to be, it was the battle page. The battle page was going essentially mobile friendly. That just happened. I listened to the town hall before. They didn't talk much about it. Nate would tease out some images of where they were aiming for. And they mentioned 2 weeks before that, they were nixing the mobile app and everyone got all upset. But what did Yabba know? Yabba knew that they were bullet points away, obstacles away from launching a new battle page. And then it showed up. Now, that's not the hype cycle that we're used to with the previous, CEO. But in a way, there have been a lot more deliverables, a lot more deliveries, actual things delivered. And there have been less false promises because there haven't been any promises. So it's an interesting time. But I give it to Yabba. He is delivering. And I do see that. I mean, take the Glint store. They're able, with the code base and how they wrote it, to adjust. When they do that across the code base and across all those pages, we get back to, well, how do we do a UI for a Scholar bulletin board? how do we do a UI interface or have the option for forking out or interfacing with assets outside of the game? How does the DAO interface with SPS token more? They're spinning off those, the key holders, those 11 key holders. There's a lot of things it seems like Yaba's doing to basically say, all right, I want to make this thing flexible enough that I can both deliver the grand vision that I've had the whole time, granted over many, many years, but it can open up the new version of the much more complicated game to a state, and I hope this is true, to a state as it was when I first arrived. Because when I first arrived, the game wasn't just Splinterlands, it was also Peak Monsters. It was a third-party apps, and it was the community interfacing with it that was like, whoa, this sets it apart. There was no rentals in game, but rentals were available. Rentals were available via an escrow service on Peak Monsters. It was horribly difficult to use, but it was possible. The fact you could rent was industry breaking. You couldn't do that in any other project. Splinterlands wanted to do it, but with 4 people on the team, they didn't. Jarvie and Asgard picked up the mantle, not only replicated a better interface for the market for card sales, they also implemented renting. Then you had the Heron accounts that were created and managed by another programmer. Then you had the Hive engine, at that time Steam engine, for the secondary marketplace for tokens, which was only DEC, but then you could do, other interfaces to help bring money in. That has only expanded. The Splinterlands ecosystem isn't just ranked battles. It isn't just gameplay. It is the whole thing. When Yaba succeeds at making this flexible, and what Nate says is like blowing his mind when he tries to, he's trying to hype us up now, and every once in a while he's like, guys, if you only saw what I see in these meetings. And yeah, Nate can be an excitable guy, but I have no reason not to trust him. All right. So when he's saying that to me points back to the AMAs. When Yaba, I'd say 1 out of 50 AMAs, you'll hear him excited. And when you do, it is awesome. And when he got excited was when he saw this foundation laid and the ambitious project rolled out so the community could run with it. And I see that still possible. Not this year, probably not next year, but over the next 3 to 5 years, I think that's totally possible. And as I've said in Mav Chat, I don't know if I've said it on Monster Mav Show, but as long as Yaba doesn't quit, this isn't going anywhere. So I'm cool with your 5-hour streams. Maybe I'll hop on and be like, wow, I'm really rusty at ranked battle play.
Gotta call in Altums to manage your challenges, man.
I need to be like, hold on, Altums is awake. Here, he'll challenge you. All right, let me watch.
Well, let's get you on there, man. So I want to circle back to something that you brought up on the Monster Maverick show, one of the last couple of episodes, where you shared your perspective on Web3 gaming versus kind of the industry standard, where we are
Web3 versus Web 2.
Yeah. Where in Web3 we are the primary source of financing the game. Versus, Web 2, these big gaming studios, they're getting investment elsewhere from, whether it's VCs or whatever. And I think you were I might be kind of mixing some of your perspectives and thoughts there, but the general idea was around bringing packs back to that $2 price point because of the nature of Web3 versus Web 2 and everything that's kind of tied into all this stuff that we've kind of been talking throughout the episode on. Would you mind resharing your perspective on Web3
Sure.
versus Web 2 and kind of the nature of us as quote unquote investors and financiers of the game?
Yeah. So this is born out of my frustration over the last couple of years is I've read posts in Map Chat, so it goes through my filter, so who knows if this was intended to be read that way, of folks trying to bring more free stuff in game, free rewards, free to play. It should be a game. This is just a game. We need to attract game players. And I agree. We need people to play the game. However, the direction that it seems we have taken to appease that request, to me, is at risk of changing or drastically altering the competitive environment we're in as a project. And so coming at it from a business side, which I'm not some business mogul or genius, but I have enough, red knowledge that I can repeat some things. You have this book I like to reference called Blue Ocean Strategy. And any business people might know about that. So Blue Ocean is essentially the unswum ocean. It's not the red ocean. The red ocean is bloody waters. You got the sharks in there, a lot of competition. You want to be in the calmer ocean, the uncharted, where you can set sail and be open in a marketplace that is relatively untouched. That's where you can develop and win. That's where Splinterlands was, as people were just discovering Web3. I feel like as we ran into the challenges of, again, expectations not meeting reality, of launching a token and thinking it's always going to go up, and all the other issues that came with the rewards that come with playing a game, so bots and other things that try to extract. Not to say that all the changes that were made to address that were bad. I'm saying that they went too far. Because now that it seems like we're going back to the competitive environment of Web 2, what are we really up against? When we want to attract, some people will say, we want to attract mobile gamers. Really? Are we going to be able to do that? Are we going to have ads on the top million view per day YouTube channels that break their 10-minute stream and say, play Raid of Legends or whatever the game is, and it's all bright colors, sparkly things that psychologists have programmed in to create dopamine hits for you to stay on that screen for X amount of time and get 1% of all players to actually buy in. Only 1%, 1 to 2% of players that play these free to play games pay anything. And then that's where 50% of the revenue comes from. The other 50% comes from advertisements, because screen time will have the ads pop in, and the advertisers like that. Well, if we want to just be a game that's on mobile, that's the market we're going in. We can't compete. We don't have the team to compete. We don't have the skill set to compete. And it will not reach the end that you want. For the people that have lost value in their assets, they aren't going to gain value going that direction. So it's just really frustrating when I look at it. So then I went to more to your point, your questions. Okay, well, what is Web3? Web3 is a lot more of an ownership model. It's where in Web3, we are essentially part of that team as asset owners and the implementers of using our assets to be match liquidity and ranked play, to be guild leaders, to do brawls, to set up tournaments, to do your 5-hour streams of doing challenges and everything else. And one of the, like we touched on before, the most important part is being that third-party backstop of applications that can fill gaps, and the sounding board for the direction of the game with useful and relatively simple to implement game suggestions. We are all part of the project. We own part of the assets. We own part of the things that their inherent value is the usefulness and utility within the project itself. Anybody who just buys and sits on it and doesn't do anything, they're not part of the project, or just wants it to go up. And I understand there's a lot of emotions, and people will just spew negative emotions about it at times, and or might suggest things thinking, oh, well, if only they did this, then it would help. And why aren't you listening to me? My whole point is we've got to see who our ideal customers. Understand that. We're a Web3 game. A Web3 game means we appeal to those who have a desire and the match expectation that with whatever they come in with, they are going to work with and help build. Not just, and the extractor is pretty much defined as somebody who comes in and wants something for nothing, or with a little effort, they receive a lot. That's not who built Splinterlands before. The community that came in, there was a lot of sacrifice that went in. And it's not those who bought it even at the top. Those who came in and bought at the top were part of the process and were part of that, cycle of the Web3 aspect of being able to earn things and some things be of value. What has come from that is tempering of the game and the tokenomics from Yaba standpoint, where a mistake like tying one DEC to one SPS airdrop point will not happen again. Overprinting of Chaos Legion already has proven to be a lesson learned. Look at Rebellion. Rebellion is not overprinted. There wasn't an overbuy during presale by the crypto eaters of the world. They bought a lot. Vuctus bought a lot. Many other people went in a lot, but not to the point where cards dropped in value. Right now, they're still holding pretty good value for being this deep into a set. I'm still working on building my Rebellion, build out of max owned cards, and I'm renting. I don't know if I mentioned this on Monster Mavs. I went in today to just check my rentals. There were only 3 epic maxed epic Rebellion cards available on the market. 3 different unique cards. All other cards there wasn't a max version of on the rental market. I've never seen that before. That's very healthy. Frustrating, but it's very healthy. Because what that creates is when we see the interest from those who want to come at this as an asset owner and a collection builder and asset builder, they'll come in and be like, you know what? Yeah, we have a missing spot. There's demand for these cards to be rented. These are renting out for 100, 150% ROA. Obviously, be careful with that term because if the asset value goes down, ROA doesn't mean much, but it's still a data point. That's what attracts people who invest. And investing is a critical part of Web3. And exactly what you said before, in Web2, the entire ecosystem is controlled by the company that creates the game. They control all the IP, they control all the rewards, they control all the revenue, they control all the expenses. They have a backer of financiers that control what comes into the business to make it build and work. The consumers are the product for the customers of that company being the advertisers. That's that relationship. Web3 is different. Web3, the customer is varied from the game player, the streamer, someone just seeking entertainment, someone who wants to build guilds and community, someone who wants to invest. And it's those investors into the assets and the IP-owned company being Splinterlands, and now the DAO, which provides really the tokenomic side of it, which I think is a good novel thing that we're going to see build out and mature over the next couple of years. That's brand new. And before we try to move too far away from it, why don't we try to understand that better and keep making it better? That's my only thing.
Sorry, we were both. I was taking all that in. It's yeah, I think it's definitely something I haven't thought of it that way in a while. I think maybe I probably thought of that, like you said, when I first got involved in the game, and but yeah, there's so much going on with all these other games that seems so attractive, taking more of a hybrid approach or a Web2 model. But yeah, what you just said, I think makes a lot of sense to that maybe we do just need to lean into the Web3 aspects of it more. Yeah, definitely a lot to think about there.
And where can we be competitive and really attract the ideal customers? Because to me, I looked at Parallel, and Parallel is exciting, but it is like a Hearthstone clone in terms of its arena interface. The battles aren't as long, and that goes back to Gods Unchained when you talked about how I got into Splinterlands. I bought into Gods Unchained and Splinterlands the same week, and I was out of Gods Unchained in 2 months, and I went all in Splinterlands. I ended up selling the one like super mythic card I got lucky to open for, 2 times my investment in Gods Unchained, and then I just left it. I don't know what it's in that wallet for Gods Unchained, and I haven't touched it since. It was clunky. It had to be a desktop app, and it required a lot of time. Now, for a gamer that's coming from Hearthstone, they were all excited about it, but that wasn't me, you know? And a gamer that was all excited about Hearthstone, I doubt in terms of a percentage of those who came in versus the percentage who would actually buy into a project would be a very good balance relative to what I saw in Splinterlands. Splinterlands, it seemed like a higher percentage of players who came in brought more into the ecosystem than wanting it to be casual play. And again, this was prior to SPS. SPS, that token bubble time frame created a weird anomaly where, I mean, After Sound admits to it. He came in because of the hype. He came in because it was like, you can make $1 per battle. This is crazy. I can pay for dinner just by playing 20 matches. This is crazy. And it was crazy. That's not sustainable Web3. To me, we are just going through the cycle that any new technology goes through. Do you guys recall like 90s? We went through the dial-up phase, how we paid for internet access?
Yeah.
That's not sustainable. How we paid for cell phone access? We would pay by the text message, right? Our phone bills would come with 50 text messages a month or something stupid. There wasn't even a data plan. It was just this many SMS messages. That's unsustainable. Right now, crypto and Web3 gaming is going through that period. Gas fees on every transaction is unsustainable. You can't do that. We've tried it. It doesn't work. That's like paying by the mile on commercial rail or something in the early railroads. I don't know if they did that, but I can imagine that would be how they priced it. That's how phones were priced. That's how computer internet access was priced. That's how a lot of things start out priced. But that's not long term. Battle Pass is a neat thing. I can see that being an ongoing thing. That's good. But a TCG model fits so well into Web3 when on a blockchain that doesn't require gas fees, of course, because I don't think gas fees are sustainable. Because it's inherent in the TCG itself that entertainment is not just playing of the cards, but it's in collecting, acquiring, trading, showing off the cards themselves. And so when that UI is built up, and I think it will be, the TCGs and similar type games have the best chance in Web3. Other than that, all I've seen from Web3 games have been a pop and then a dwindle. This is was it a Gala Games or I think it was a Gala Games. Are you familiar with the Gala Games?
Mm-hmm.
Different games in there. Well, what was the
familiar with like the ecosystem?
Okay, there was like Town Square, Town Plot, something.
Yeah.
It was an early game. So I don't know. It was an early like farming
the one
game.
that Stever has talked about playing?
Yeah,
probably.
I think so. Maybe Townville?
Something like that. It was an odd game because I got in only a couple months after it launched, but early enough to where there were only like 250 people on the playing at a time. And they would do a weekly challenge leaderboard. And if you got to the higher up leaderboard, you'd get rewarded in a token and some special NFT. Here's what was strange. In order so it couldn't be bought or whatever reasons they had, you had to have it running on your computer. And you had to move or do an action once every set amount of time. Otherwise, the game would pause and your city that you're building, your infrastructure, your farm wouldn't do anything. You wouldn't be pumping water. You wouldn't be collecting resources or anything. So, yeah, it was very strange. And so this was November.
You just had to move your guy around to watch the grass grow.
No joke. Yeah. So I have a laptop plugged in out of reach of my little toddlers who would run by and hit it, right? And I would have it sitting up high. And I even like I was like, okay, I want to figure out how I can get to the top of the leaderboard. I made it as high as like number 10 in ranking. But to do that, I set an alarm every 60 minutes or 90 minutes. Even at night, I'll go down and wiggle the mouse and do a click so that my guys kept collecting. And it all added up to the number of resources. And you had to optimize the way you laid it out. Well, here's the problem, right? Is the early people collected so many tokens and so many assets that as they added on more people, their barrier to entry to being competitive wasn't there. You couldn't compete. And that's the problem that people had in Splinterlands for a long time was like, this is a thing I don't think people are remembering is when SPS launched in July, up until Chaos Legion actually launched their cards in January, the biggest complaint was I want to play, but I can't get the cards. The cards were so expensive. The rents were so expensive that, yeah, they were offset a little bit by the gameplay. And I don't know if proportionally it was still good. It might have been. As in, like, if a $6,000 deck today would earn, 15 cents a battle is equivalent to that proportion, right? I don't know. But it was so difficult. And it was even just access to cards. Before Chaos Legion, with that many accounts going after so few assets, I can't imagine the number of players that came and left because they just couldn't play.
I entered the
That's
game
how
in
big
that time, exactly that time frame. It was right before I think it was Chaos Legion. Yeah, I think that was like maybe like the pre-sale, and you still had to get vouchers to.
So it
if
was
you wanted to get
December
packs.
of
Yeah,
2020,
exactly. Yeah, it's
2021,
December
I think.
2022,
2020.
2021. Yeah, then going into January 2022. Yeah, and it
December
was just like
2021.
yeah, it was just like I couldn't. I was like but it was like fine because I was at first just playing with the ghost cards, right? Because I was learning the game and
They
still coming out of
launched the
that.
ghost cards around that time. That's right.
Yeah.
Before that, they didn't have ghost cards. So imagine not
Okay.
having ghost cards and wanting to play.
Yeah.
You couldn't.
I was
That was a
confused.
quick
I was like,
fix.
I have money I want to spend. Like, why can't I, like,
Why
why
can't
can't I
I
buy
spend it? Or
cards? And
even
it's
a
just like,
reasonable amount,
yeah,
right? I
exactly.
can't buy packs. Like the store was empty. Literally, the store shelves were empty. And the UI for the secondary market was not good because we had just relied on peak monsters. No one actually bought from the store UI. Peak monsters was good enough, but for a new player, you didn't know that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's a really, really good perspective. I mean, right now is such an easy time for a new person to come in and affordably join the game at a level where they would actually get traction. But the community that's still in this hangover of what we've been through is not in a position to encourage that. Exactly the opposite. Like I guess now they've made Mav Chat, private, which I think is good. I don't know if that's official or I misread that or whatever, but
You have to like request or you have to verify or something on
oh,
Discord
good.
to get access.
Good. You have to say I'm mature audiences only.
Yeah.
I know what I'm getting into, and I will go to therapy afterwards if needed. So yeah.
Because for
That's
a while
what the
there, I was like,
5-hour
why is
stream
Mav
is.
Chat not showing up? I was asking Jen, I was like, why is Mav Chat not showing up to me? And I had to like
You were
figure
banned.
That's
out,
funny.
yeah, to do
You
all
were
this
banned.
stuff.
You were banned.
Yeah, I thought I
Banned.
got banned. I was like, geez. I'm
They
not
did
even
you
in
a
there. I
favor.
don't know how I got banned
You
from
should
it.
you should be grateful.
Yeah.
As I say on Monster Mavs, you can ping Neil all you want. He will never see it. He does not open Discord. But no, I mean, there's a good entry, and it's just we've got to separate. We've got to separate the expectations that we as longer term players have of what could have been from what we actually have now and the path that we're on to what it will be for our own sanity. But also, if we want out of this and the best way to get to where we thought we could be anyway, we have to encourage the people that are coming in to help build that. Without it, we're not going to get there. And it has nothing to do with token price.
Yeah. Well, Vette, I want to be cognizant of time, so let's shift gears a little bit here, and I want to talk about your. I think it's you've got a couple of acronyms that are ubiquitous with VetteV. Always
right.
on in-game notification system is one, and kitchen table mode. I'm gonna butcher the acronym, but
Kitchen table game mode for all.
that's the one. Yes,
Absolutely. So the
man.
first one, the Aoings, that was
Aoings, yes.
Jimmy's. Yeah, Jimmy's Fat Jimmy was like, why don't we just have these little pings at the top, just a little icon that says I need to do something, which is now in process of getting there. You see the little note at proposals instead of it being a banner, just a little one or two, three or four, whatever. That's been very helpful. So that's good. But yeah, the kitchen table game mode for all. So that acronym, Jimmy came up with that acronym to string it down for chat. This to me is like take your 5 hour, battle chat. And I'll take it back a little further. So you have Aftersound, and I don't know who else was on with them. New set had just launched, or New Summer had just come out, and they're like, "Oh, let's test this summer." Say the Water Summoner, and they're like, "All right, let's play battles." They went through 3 or 4 challenges, and they either wouldn't get the water element, or they get Silent Summoners, or they'd have low mana, something that makes it to where they couldn't test the single card they wanted to test in a streamer mode to help people know the game. I was like, really? Why don't we have fully customizable game mode for all? That's the kitchen table game mode for all, where we take the challenge system. And this is something we need Splinterlands to do, is in the UI, they just open up the options. You have a global menu and you can have a per battle menu and just set it up and say, I'm going to play with my buddy. And we want to do 10 matches, 20 matches, whatever it is with these settings, or we want to do match to match and we want to adjust something in between. It's still the same setup of challenging somebody, but you can choose to be completely random, or you can choose to customize the mana cap, customize the elements, customize the series of cards, rule sets, do something really wacky. Like, what if you played with the reward card sets only from all reward card sets, but that's it? What if you did just really weird combinations? That's the fun of a game like this. That's what a trading card game does. You talk about like Magic the Gathering, they have these like GameCube things, they have mock drafts that people put together, their own draft packs, and they'll spend hours making these things. I've never done it, I've just heard of this happening. But then you have a draft night with your friends that recreate that situation. And the gameplay is horrible in terms of options of cards next to, a fully optimized commander deck or something. But there's fun in that because it's unknown. That is like, why don't we have that? And I've talked to somebody in match, it just blows my mind we don't, because to me, background is engineering. When one is developing a project or a system and making tweaks to the system, you want to have an environment to test. And to me, why wasn't this an environment to test already? I was surprised they don't have that. They don't. There's no like environment to through a UI test this. That would be optimal. I've spoken to folks about this before. I don't know if I had Yaba's ear at the time. The one pushback was, okay, well, we don't want to create something fully customizable that a bot can ping the API, drag down the servers, or get data points for the battle helper or whatever else. Valid concern. Battle Pass. Limit API calls. I'd be fine with 50 per account. So then I can do 50 challenges, you can do 50 challenges. In your 5-hour stream with 7 different people, you have plenty of options to have different people challenge that you won't run out. There's ways to overcome that objection. And I think the benefit of having a fully customizable UI not only creates an on-ramp for us, and I'll get to the on-ramps in a second, but also creates an environment that they can use to test in the game. New summoner comes out, whatever, they can put it through their bot and they can say, are we breaking the game with these abilities? I think that's critical.
Yeah, absolute bingo, man. The sandbox environment is something that I think we sorely miss. That's one thing. I think the energy system by far and away was an improvement upon the pre-existing ECR system, with one exception being you have to buy energy to continue playing. The challenge system is okay, but if there was a live sandbox version where I could just, essentially queue up and, maybe I tick a box in my settings where I receive a broadcast notification that, hey, B Jangles is waiting in the sandbox. Do you want to come play? And then being able to customize and build these rule sets, create new meta, I think is something that is sorely missing. We've all seen. I think things have changed a little bit with Venka and Kai, but there was 5 month stretch where Grim Bardoon was king. And perhaps
I heard
might...
on your streams. I don't know, but
I'm sure Altums could vouch for that one.
I was actually watching for that. In 20 battles, I only saw him use it twice. So I don't think at the very top of the game it's as meta. So I would encourage folks who fall into a meta, and I've always liked this about the game, is to find the meta that's there, now break it. And if you can break it, then you will win. That's the game. But anyway, to
100%. I think the challenge there is it's costly to try and experiment.
You're right.
And fail, right? Where a sandbox would completely go around that. And I can test meta, I can test, what is the counter to this meta? And it's not going to cost me a thing. And it's going to encourage the fun.
You've hit on two things there. One is the vital part of the current system has created a negative feels bad when one queues up a battle and loses because you've spent an energy point to do so. So you actually have lost, right? No one wants to go into a game and feel real loss. There's value to that energy point. So I think somebody who put it in the town hall that Yabba responded to said it would be a good idea. There should be a reward for spending an energy point to be at minimum battle liquidity. So nobody should end the game, end the day in Modern without having spent all of their energy points. We want to encourage that, right? That gets us battle liquidity, and that gets people practice, gets people engaged. Now, the second point, when you're talking about the battle mode, that's the kitchen table game mode for all, versus it costs money to play a battle. Something that I've been thinking about a lot recently, and it comes from when I first saw the game, was and is ranked play is tournament level play. Compare this to Magic the Gathering. Who gets to play in for money gameplay? Is it the new guy that comes in and is a weekend in Magic and has bought their commander decks and a couple extra cards? They're like, all right, I'm going to play for stakes. I'm going to play in this tournament. I'm going to get something for my battles. That doesn't happen. The commitment to get onto the Pro Tour, something that actually rewards income in a TCG, is so outside the normal consumer base of a TCG that I think we as a community and the team, I hope, sees that we're constricting Splinterlands to being only catering to that very top of what a TCG is usually appealed to. We are only going after those Pro Tour people because that's all ranked play is. And so it just reiterates we need this casual kitchen table game mode for all. I mean, PvE, entry, starter, education, all of this will be solved within weeks. I guarantee within weeks. I will dump money into third parties to help make this happen. If they open APIs to this challenge system with customization, Asgarth's getting a ping, Yixen's getting a ping, Xbot team's getting a ping. Like, guys, let's do this. And on that point, you're talking about, I want Jangles to be available to do a challenge. Did you know Xbot already has that feature?
The challenge bots?
Yeah, the
challenge bots. It's just unknown. And it's also at a cost. Because if I can bot my account in Wild for real world earnings, I don't want to be a challenge bot because now I'm conflicted, right? So I have to give something to get something. So I think a secondary level of this game mode is almost two different servers. There's got to be servers for ranked play, essentially tournament play, whether you bought it or do modern. And then you can use all of your NFTs into challenges at the same time. Maybe that's the point of nodes. Maybe that's the point of battle arenas on land. I don't know how Yaba intends to implement it, but at bare minimum, we've got to get away from this. I'm getting a feels bad for having to make an opportunity cost decision just to have fun. That needs to be fixed.
Completely agree, man. And something I would love to see with this sandbox environment. Maybe this is the perfect home for max ghost cards for everybody.
Yeah,
maybe
my follow-up.
Yeah, maybe this is the free to play version where anybody can go play. We can dictate our rule sets. And another piece I don't think we touched on, or at least kind of expanded upon, is the data collection that would be made available to the team. To the team. Maybe I'm able to hop in and say, to shout out to Games on the Block. Maybe I'm able to say every monster in the third position is going to be granted taunt, and I can fully customize and build out potential new rule sets and new game mechanics using the ability set that's already available in game, and feed rule sets to the team. We might be putting call me Tim on the hot seat a little bit, but I think it would be beneficial.
So make
for
map
everybody.
chat test available to all a little at a time. So if they have an idea for a new rule set or idea for a new ability, they might throw it into an existing card in the sandbox and just let people have fun.
Bingo.
So just like a beta mode.
Yeah, exactly. Or just say, hey, we're beta testing this new ability. You can apply it to one existing monster on your team at a time, sort of thing. So
here's a question.
Yeah.
Would you pay for a battle pass platinum versus battle pass regular in order to be part of diamond level ghost cards and beta abilities?
100%.
Yeah.
Right.
No question.
A gamer would.
Yeah,
A gamer would. Right? A gamer would. That's the whole point. There is a revenue stream that will help sustain the team, not only in revenue, but in knowledge, like you're saying, that shouldn't take too much more effort. Now, I understand the pressure they're under, and I'm not a coder, so there's probably a lot more that goes into it, but it's all a matter of prioritization. They have their backlog of promises. I'm at a point right now, they've already said land is back burner. Good. Land is back burner. The people that are already in land are in land. Land has already responded in the marketplace to what they said. Good. Land is back burner. Then let's get the game interface right for the marketing push Yaba wants to do. And we need a place for them to land, for new players to land. And they're going to land in there, and they're going to say, all right, maybe in-game chat or something that allows for the people that are really engaged, like the Royal Eagles or anybody else or you guys or whatever, like a little ping that says, tune in to the show tonight for whatever. So we don't have Splinterlands TV, but we could have advertisements like for your show. And then have a question about the game, ping here. And if nothing else, make it at least a Discord link. Something that someone can go to get to the community. Because through all of my time with the game, and this is true for just about everyone I've talked to, you came for a certain reason. Interest in TCGs because it was like Magic the Gathering, interested in Web3 gaming because you saw it was the next big thing, interest in a token because you just want to say, green is good and I want more money. But you stayed around for the community. That's the reason people stayed. We have to get people there. And when you have that hook of this challenged environment that's like, hey, you're not ready for ranked play, you're not ready for the Pro Tour, no problem. Test your stuff here. You get a few free games with it. You have a few challenge things you can do against bots or whatever. Because the minute this is available, I know that guilds like Team Possible and other people are going to set up bots to be available for people to challenge. Absolutely. Then we'll have that set up. We'll even offer, like this happened. This actually happened. When we had battle match liquidity issues down in bronze and silver, prior to the CP league caps and all that, there were issues. Team Possible offered up accounts, these Heron accounts. We donated assets to create bots, low-level bots, to just chill out in bronze because we were running into problems where new players were coming in and they couldn't find a match. We've been through this before. We'll do this again in this challenge environment. We've got the people and we have those with technical chops that can provide third-party PvE. There could be a fire mission, an earth mission, a life mission that these programmers are going to provide, again, in like a week's time. Won't take much.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking
I'd
back
love to see
to
that.
our conversation with Siler. He is looking for a more permanent fixture with the team. He openly put his hand up and said, "Hey, I want to develop game modes once I kind of put my battle helper and bot solution out there, and would love to move from contractor to full-time employee. Maybe this is something that we can
the
pitch."
DAO funds employee spot for game mode development. Siler, get your application with your price range and let's put it up. What's
Beautiful.
60,000, 80,000? What is that in terms of growing interest in the ecosystem that the DAO is 100% reliant on right now? What is it? This is the answer. Siler absolutely has the chops to do it. He's already done it. He's already created challenge bots, right? Now the next piece is he just gets in there and gets access to the code base of the challenge system, combines it with the tournament customizability. The way that guy codes, it'd be just a matter of a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd love to see it, man. Hopefully.
Well, you're good at proposal writing. I will put up the entire price. You write it.
I'll do it, man. Speaking
All
of
right.
which, and that's a nice segue here. I kind of want to round things out with, the proposal.
Oh, well, you can't yet. You can't yet. There's a story of a goat.
We'll get there. But before we get to the goat and the sandwiches,
you're right. Sandwiches.
Let's talk about that proposal. So I've shared it with a couple of folks. It seems to be getting some green lights from some of the bigger whales in the ecosystem. So I feel positive in that it will see the light of day as at least an official proposal. But the idea, I think it's kind of been pulled bits and pieces from stuff I've heard on Mav Chat, from stuff I've heard on Monster Mavs from you. And I just kind of put pen to paper and have organized some thoughts and put together the proposal around soulbound cards. And the idea is to make them instantly unlockable, which I think I was a little bit disheartened when I heard Yaba speak around the next batch of soulbounds. I guess it was this most recent town hall a couple of weeks back, where he said, in his mind, he's seeing the current mechanics continuing with future iterations of soulbound cards, in that they would be locked and bound to your account completely and fully until the cycle has run its course. But, and this was the first time I've heard this big fat asterisk offered by Yaba, if you have an opposing opinion, put forth a proposal and we'll consider it if there's enough support. So with all of that in mind, yeah, we've put together, I think, a pretty cool solution. It's not quite moving back to, what you were talking about earlier, Vet, is really interesting, where the earnings per match were never significant. But the big fat caveat there was there were always chests with the potential for very significant earnings.
That's a good point. Yes.
Yeah, and that's been completely revoked from the game. You still have a way of getting these cards, but they're absolutely worthless until the end of the set, as soulbound cards currently live in the ecosystem. Mm-hmm. So what we're trying to do, and I'll kind of let you share your thoughts on I think I've heard your comments directly through some DMs that we've gone back and forth on, but the idea is smaller soulbound sets over the course of a year. I think what I put forth in the proposal was 7 cards at a time, 3-month cycles, and each cycle is broken into 1 month time blocks, where the cost to unlock per month starts very high and gets gradually decreased with the option for vouchers to cut prices in half. And then I think something else to your earlier point around generating revenue for the team, something that hasn't been mentioned is the idea of the team seeing a fixed percentage. I put forth 10%. It seems to be kind of NFT industry standard for recurring sales, where the team gets a residual kickback on every unlock and subsequent sale within that window of, I guess it's 12, 18 months. I don't know what Yaba's made a decision on thus far, but the team would see 10% revenue come from a 10% kickback on every sale in the form of revenue. So yeah, I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts, Vette. Is this, I realize it's not moving us the pendulum back entirely to what things were previously, but I feel like it is a win for the community. So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the whole picture.
Right. Yeah, I think change is necessary. If we review how reward cards worked prior to Chaos Legion rewards, and I came in the middle of it, it was already in process, is they would release small set, 7 to 9 cards, various rarities, and those would go until they printed out. And every 90 days or so, they would launch another batch. And it came to be that a pretty good set would be available at any given time, 15 to 20 cards, but 4 to 6 of them would go out of print every 90 days or so. And what that created was excitement that, oh, we get to see a new batch of reward cards. So leading up to the print rate going out, there'd be a rush of battles of people trying to get these reward cards. So that was one aspect. Then the launch would happen. That would shift things around. It would shift the meta a little bit. So it created excitement. So this rolling reward card thing was really neat aspect. I don't think Yaba ever intended not to do that. It's just, again, the SPS rush surprised everything, literally broke the entire card printing situation, because with the increase in battles, the reward cards that were left printed out and they were done. And so they had to create a new reward card set with Chaos League. And they did it all at once. So I think going back to the smaller amounts printed over time is good. I actually like the overlap. So I don't think that was in the proposal. But the most critical piece of it, and I think the most objections that the general community has had, or at least the loud voices in the community have had, is unlockable from day one. I think that's critical. And I think a high price is fully justifiable, because here's the fact of the matter is, if you have a high price and no one's willing to pay it, then guess what? All you people who don't want soulbounds unlocked on day one, there won't be any soulbounds unlocked on day one. You don't have to worry about it. There isn't going to be anyone. I mean, there would be very few, but the person who says, oh, I'm going to unlock my soulbound and put it on the market to try to sell it. Well, if it's never bought, then there's no difference in it being soulbound forever. There's this other side of the equation that so many folks that seem to dominate the narrative recently miss when they're so focused on supply. They're focused on reduce the card counts, reduce the print rate of tokens, reduce. They miss demand. And I get it. Demand is not increasing, it's shrinking. We're anemic demand relative to where we were even immediately prior to SPS. But any business, any project that's worth it is not stagnant. We're just transitioning. We have to be prepared to meet the change in demand, and a locked soulbound for a print rate or a print time frame of what we're at 18 months plus. We now have a situation where a new player struggles to get in because they don't have new player experience. They don't have, an easy way to onboard it to gameplay. But we also have a difficulty for a crypto degen to come in too. How are we going to get that whale to come in? This is something I've talked about a lot with Neil and other people. We had people on the hook wanting to bring in $200,000 to $500,000 into this ecosystem in 2021. They wanted to dump it into the ecosystem. There was no way for them to do it without shifting the market so big that it wasn't worth their movement. Neil had $1 million+ guy that wanted to come in. There was no way for him to come in. and we want to keep roadblocks like they can't even have the soulbound cards, which are absolutely required for competitive gameplay, we can't. So to me, having lockable for the entire set release is a non-starter in a Web3 game. And that goes back to our Web2 versus Web3 conversation. It's non-starter. And I agree that we're matching Yaba's, suggestion before, and I like how you put it in the tranches. And I think you got it from another project, or there are other projects who do this, that you have a high price and then a lower price. Have that high price. What's going to happen is you'll get those people that do earn the rewards and have a connection for a private sale or a pre-negotiated sale that are going to get paid the unlock fee plus a bonus, and they're going to get the card. Does that dilute the market? Does that harm anyone else in the community? No. It does two things. It adds an account for battle liquidity and activity on the blockchain in the game. And two, it creates a marketable event. A marketable event is like getting that gold foil legendary, where back in the day that, we had those chests, the Filipino player would join in, they'd be playing at the bar, and they had this videotape, and he's jumping up and down because he got a gold foil legendary. That's a marketable event. Saying that I just earned a soulbound card that I was able to unlock and sell, and the sale price was hundreds of dollars. Now, net, that player got what? I don't know, right? In realistic terms, they might have gotten $20. We ended up earning 180 or 160, and the team got 20. The entire sale was useful for the community. The entire sale was useful for marketing, and the sale was useful for adding accounts active in the ecosystem. I honestly don't see a downside. I don't see the argument.
On the demand side of the equation, I'm scrolling in the background here through the current soulbound cards, and I'm trying to think how many of these cards realistically would go for that proposed first time block 18x. Maybe Izzyar. Maybe
there were only a few. Yeah.
Yeah.
But even then, not many would, because here's the thing, right? It takes so much to earn them, right? And I know in your proposal you said maybe like a 90-day time period. It took me way longer than 90 days to max some of these. Now, granted, at this point, I mean, yeah, I'm in a unique position of being a top account played by Ultims, but I have 3 max copies of a lot of the reward cards, but it took 18 months to get there, right? This isn't a day one problem. Day one, I'm not selling my Izzyar for 18x. There's no way, because that's going to give me the battling that I need for ranked play, brawls, and tournaments. No way I'm giving it up. So I'm probably already in tranche 2 or 3.
Well, I mean, it's also worth considering your point in the life cycle, right? You've got access to the full breadth of non-soulbound cards, where selling that top end Izzyar on day one is not going to benefit you the same way if one of our buddies comes in and they're a brand new player to the game and they're renting 99% of their deck. Well, what would they do with that money? They would turn around and probably invest in Chaos Legion or invest in Rebellion and build the foundation from owned cards and focus on soulbound further down the track.
So I envision this as being Peak Monsters creates another page that becomes the soulbound unlocking bid board that then has the demand side listed for all of the cards. Because a new player coming in will get a soulbound card that can be unlocked, but it needs a warning that people just don't go and blow money to unlock it with no one on the other side to buy it, right? There needs to be a demand board that says, I'm actually willing to buy it. They match up the buyer prior to the sale. That we want. That's the behavior we want. I think the downside that I see at this point is we have people that think, ooh, I can sell this for more than I'm paying, so I'm just going to unlock it now. That's like the vouchers at the beginning of Chaos Legion pre-sale, right? The $20 vouchers. So it never happened again. We don't want a $20 voucher situation. So I think I think that might be thought through. I don't think that's a stopper. I don't think that's a stop to this unlocking feature. I think that's merely an implementation specific thing, right? How are we going to implement it so we can help protect the new player who's ignorant about it, right? Just because you can unlock it for 18 times the burn doesn't mean it's going to sell for 18 times the burn because you need the demand. Fix that problem. We've helped fix new player ignorance. Because I won't call it like stupidity, right? Stupid, we can't fix stupid. We've got to protect ignorant. Oh yeah, I'm from Texas originally, so can't fix stupid. I was raised on it. But
well, let's talk timelines real quickly, Vet. So Yaba, I saw him post something in Discord. Something came up. He's not going to be available for the town hall, so that buys us, the idea of getting this proposal in front of Yaba for, him to kind of push back and see if we have to fine tune before putting it officially on the DAO. Trying to get that in front of him before he had a chance to say this is the way that the next Soulbound is coded and ready to go. So I think we have a little bit of additional time because of Yaba's absence at the town hall. But ideally, I think within the next couple of days, this proposal should be up for DAO voting.
Yep.
Is that timeline
in preparation
jive with you?
I think that's good. I think preparation for Yaba is the key points, being the unlockability and why. The specific implementations of how the company should do that is merely suggestion, right? The proposal as written, I think that'd be too much for him. The big thing I think we need to help communicate and converse with him is, will unlockability be something that they would go with in these sort of price points and timelines? And how does that match with or conflict with what their longer term plans are? And then we don't have to know specifics necessarily, just if there's any big roadblocks to prevent this or guidance on what needs to change so that it fits. And I think we don't have this really now. We have Claiborne as the advocate for the DAO in terms of SPS. And this is something I've talked about, I think, on Monster Maths before, is other DAOs have this dual proposal system where anything token-based is ironclad. Yab actually mentioned this in the last town hall, and it's exactly how I thought the DAO would be doing in voting. Anything SPS-based is DAO's responsibility wholly. Anything game-based is merely a suggestion. That said, to Yaba's credit and the team, they have taken game suggestions very seriously, especially relative to a lot of other projects in terms of probably percentage of implementation. And I do think the Soulbound unlocking thing has a very good reason to create this alternative to the current set as we move forward. So I would focus on the unlocking, the time frame, and then I don't know about your other points. It didn't talk anything about any new marketplace or anything else that was required. It was pretty much the unlocking, the time frame, and kind of the print time. You wanted to shrink that down to 90 days?
Yeah.
I think that's a little short in terms of the numbers that come out. The depth of cards wouldn't be enough. But I think that's a detail that can be. That's more of like a suggestion. I think that would help with the data analysis. That's basically unlocking is our number one thing. After that, here's our thoughts. Let's check that against the data. What was the print rate of it? How did that deal with the player base and demand? And how would that fluctuate through varying demand increases and decreases through the life of a set? And in just first thought, although it makes it a little complicated, it's something that can be done with the data we have if we have the analytical tools. This is where I miss that Chaos Commander guy who dug into the blockchain data. He was really good at that. Was the previous print rate was like, you can print this many of like Lord Arianthus. It had a print rate. Well, we have number of battles. We have number of active accounts. We have number of battle played in Modern. If we did a print rate it's a dynamic print number based on the battles or accounts that are active, we can more quickly respond to demand. Because what I've noticed over the last 5 years of being in this project, and it's true for any project in business for that matter, is projects get into a problem not just by we'll say a sales, having too little sales, but also having too much sales. That's like the SPS time. Too much demand burn the servers. When you can't quickly respond to demand, it's a problem. Maybe this isn't something to roll out on day one. Maybe we say, all right, let's start with 90 days, rough print rate target, but over this 90 days, we'll monitor and put it in an algorithm so that we can track demand. It's exactly like the way rewards are released in battle, right? Rewards are dynamic. I'll literally see a battle played with the same multipliers at a certain rank point in previous battle, and it'll be off by 2 SPS in earning. Why? Because the algorithm of how much rewards were distributed changed between those two battles. So algorithms are already in place to take into account those variables that can help us in the print rate of soulbound cards. That's my only holdup, is making sure the soulbound cards, it's a better problem for the growth of the game to have slightly more printed than less. And I know that's backwards because people are like, oh, less means it'll be scarcer and it'll be worth more. It's like, true. But the point of a game, especially a TCG and anything in Web3 being online, network effect and growing user base is a critical component of long-term success. And if you don't have accessibility for the very next batch of people, then it'll be just like Hep was saying when he came in, how do I even buy a card? How do I even get access? If you come 6 months, 12 months after the reward set went out, yeah, that's going to be more expensive to get those. But you also have less time until they go out of modern anyway. But if you're right after it goes out of print and it's not available at all because it was underprinted, I think that's a problem that can be solved. So that's just my thoughts on the print rate.
Okay. Well, yeah, hopefully either way, I'm hopeful that we can get something out into the airwaves on the DAO proposal system in the next couple of days. And yeah, so stay tuned for that. Keep your eyes peeled.
Yeah, I'll check my DMs for the latest version.
Yeah, cool. I want to circle back to the term marketable events that you have taken part in directly a couple of these and some I would say pretty unique to Splinterlands at the time that you were participated in these things. Word on the street is that you are were the proud owner of said DEC goat that we've heard, kind of floating through the grapevine over the years. Can you tell us about this goat? Is he or she still part of the family?
She is. Her name is Cadbury, because the year of her birth, the farm that cared for her named the goats after candy. So she was Cadbury Cream. And she just kitted out 2 new baby goats 2 weeks ago. So little baby goats running around. That's the second multiple. So she had one a year ago. So exponential growth from our DEC goat. So there's growth in many aspects. So the story is, I was working with, not working with, I had introduced the game and the ecosystem to my nephew-in-law, and he pokes around. He's probably in your comments and stuff here or there. He likes to watch the streams and After Sound streams. And I was helping him out with getting in the game and getting tokens. So I sold some DEC to him via Venmo transaction. And that very same amount that he paid me in US dollars immediately went an hour later to the goat owner to buy our goat. And I had on my screen, I was like, wait a minute, I just paid for a goat with dark energy crystals. This is pretty dang cool. It was right there. I have the screenshot somewhere. I think I shared it in Map Chat. So it legitimately happened, right back to back. And I was like, okay, this is how this works. This was on ice cream money. Well, granted, it's in goat form that then you milk and then you turn to cream and then you turn it into ice cream, but it's ice cream money nonetheless. So yes, that is our DEC goat Cadbury cream. And I think that's important is recognizing that, like, we talked about some of the things earlier in other parts of the world, how it can be life-changing. But even the small stuff, it's so critical. Like, I think it's healthy for anybody, no matter where you are in the game, even if you're down in value, to to pull some out. I have so many of those. Actually, like, who was it? One of the OGs was talking about a trip to Disneyland they had recently, and they paid with Splinterlands earnings.
I think it might have been Gold Matters that paid for a Disney trip.
Maybe,
I think.
or Fighter for Freedom, or somebody. Yeah. So one of them was like, I never really took money out, but I did. I took Disneyland or Disney World, and they took a trip. So for 2 years, we did a trip to Grey Wolf Lodge. We would do 4 days, 3 days, or whatever, and it would be an all-out trip. And I was paid completely with Splinterlands money. I would sell some positions, sell some tokens. I would load that into a specific checking account, and that checking account would grow over about 2 month period. And whatever was in there was for use at this trip. And I'll tell you, during that 2021 trip, oh yeah, that was a big trip. We had 3 cabanas that we were sharing with other friends. They're like, "Are you getting?" It was like pizza for everybody. It was like, "This is great." So yeah, we had a lot of fun on that one. But it's I think that's really healthy. Is in any investment in anything, if you're in this as a way that it's supposed to improve your life outside of the game, then practice having it improve outside of your game. Then that's what it is. Even if it's something where you have to take, all right, I'm going to take the earnings I make and I'll be an unstaking of SPS or whatever, and I'll convert that into some stable until I can withdraw it, past gas fees or whatever else. $50, $100, whatever it is, over 6 months, whatever it is. That can be something. When one has that, then it's more than a game. We're outside of this game. There's no Web 2 game that can compete with that. There's no Web 2 game that can pay for a Grey Wolf Lodge trip. There's no Web 2 game that I can go and transfer the in-game items I won to become a goat. Not one. So don't turn my game into Web 2. I want more goats. Well,
More goats.
I love it, man. And yeah, great name, Cadbury. Shout out to
Cadbury
Cadbury.
Cream. So she's Cadbury Cream. We didn't name her other ones. So we have Cadbury, we have Juanita, and Juanita's baby from last year is Grace O'Malley, because it was pirate themed, and Grace O'Malley's a pirate. And then this year they all kitted out, and we had a total of 7 babies, but those have all been claimed. We're not keeping any of our own herd this year, and we brought one in from outside, so we have a new one, Ariel, because this year is Disney princesses. So every year has a theme, and so Ariel is the one. So we have 3 goats in milk. They're Nigerian dwarf goats, and we've got past feeding most of the milk to the babies. So right now we have more milk than we can handle. We have, and if Fat Jimmy hears this, the feta has been made. We have 6 blocks of it. So he might be getting a package. So he swung by here for the holidays.
That's awesome, man. I was just gonna ask, is goat cheese one of the end products that you guys are producing?
Goat cheese, goat soap, goat cream, goat butter. Yep.
Yum.
It's a lot.
Nice.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes about a little over half gallon a day. And for a family that doesn't drink too much milk to begin with, we usually convert it to something else. We have more than we can handle between that and chickens. Like if you just have them, so like chickens, they're funny little creatures. They keep producing themselves. They make more of themselves, and then those become food, either the bird or the egg that they produce, and it just produces. And so during egg laying season, we have more than we can handle. We have 13 laying hens right now, and we get about a dozen eggs a day. And we don't eat a dozen eggs a day.
That's a lot of eggs.
It's a lot.
Well, Vet, you've got to set up a DEC for goods shop page and close the loop, man.
Oh, I know. I should. I don't know. Maybe that'd be good. Could do that. Yeah, it's farm shares or CSA using DEC would be good.
Awesome.
No, so yeah, it's that's the way to do it. Is you gotta convert it out in some form, make it tangible, make it real, because it is more than a game. Even if it's a down position, rewards are down. Yeah, that's the thing. Is like I was writing through the SPS stuff and all that. Is like, okay, if you wait all the way to the end, you don't know where it's going to be. Even right now, you don't know where it's going to be. But there is stuff that you're earning every day. You can convert some of that, turn it into something real. That's then something tangible and a memory and something that lasts, and nothing else. It is a story. And the story is what will help bring people into this. Because again, we're not competing against Web 2. There's no story for Web 2. Like, I don't remember a Web 2 game I was playing on my phone 4 years ago and I have a story for. I don't have that. But this type of game, Web 3 in general, crypto in general, and Web 3 gaming creates stories and changes in people's lives. That's the difference. We're not a Web 2 game. We're a Web 3 experience. I don't know. What is it? But it's more than that.
Well, sage advice, man. We kind of started, and I feel like that's a great place to stop. Is learn when to take some off the top, when to take your own cream from the Cadbury.
That's right,
so to speak. It's great,
Cadbury
man.
cream, absolutely. And butter on a steak is good. I'll tell you that. You gotta enjoy it.
Beautiful. Well, Vette, man, I'm very grateful that we were able to make this happen, man. I lots of sage words have been spoken and shared, and I certainly appreciate your perspectives and your willingness to put yourself out there and share your thoughts with the community, man. Very valuable stuff.
Oh, thanks for the invite. The podcast is very enjoyable. I hope people get something out of this, and they can find me on Discord and DMs if they care to.
Awesome. All right. Well, everybody, like I said, keep your eyes peeled for that proposal. I think it'll be coming through under my name. Vette, I'm gonna put you on the spot here and make sure we're still good for funded by Vette.
Absolutely.
And also the proposal for kitchen table game mode always available, if I got that correct.
Kitchen table game mode for all.
Game mode for all.
That's the one. Game mode for all. Hopefully we can get that one, kind of teed up in the wings and coming down the pipeline to a DAO proposal near you sooner than later.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Right.
Let's move everything forward.
Beautiful. All right. Hep, any words to wrap us up, man?
Nope.
You're going to be making a pit stop in Connecticut for some homemade goat cheese?
Yeah, next time I'm up that way, I think I'm going to have to get out there, get some eggs and get some feta.
Oh, talk to Fat Jimmy. Yeah, I've got this aged balsamic, that my brother gets me every year from Italy. You put some of that on this feta, and it's good. And then we have sourdough that my wife makes. You use the sourdough discard, and you make these little crackers out of it. Yeah, ask Fat Jimmy about it. It was good.
Yum.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Sounds good.
As long as you like little kids, because they're going to be running around doing crazy stuff.
As long as they're not mine, I've got two of my own little ones of my own. So yeah,
perfect. Yeah, you can leave these behind, no problem. They'll just wave goodbye and driving us nuts.
Wonderful. Building bridges here at the People's Guild, man. I love it.
That's right.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks again, Vette. Very enjoyable episode. Thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and we'll touch base shortly. And for everybody out there listening, you have been listening to
People's Guild.